Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It is the Tuesday Bulletin. It's a different look Tuesday Bulletin. Natasha is off to Germany to see the Hoops in Leipzig. I think we've got an able replacement in Liam joining us this afternoon. Liam, you're very welcome to the Tuesday Action Bulletin. I think it's our first show on, so you're very, very welcome to join us.
Thanks, mate. Pleasure to be here. Apologies to anybody who was expecting a lovely Natasha and got my big fat face instead, but you'll just have to make do. But just to be serious for a wee minute, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody, because I've not been on for the last week or so, as you might know, and my father-in-law passed away quite suddenly. And to everybody who has been watching, who's been sending in messages, I just want to say thanks. We appreciate it, wife and I both, and all the best to everybody out there. Sorry, carry on.
No, don't be daft at all. I think certainly, I know you're different side of the world from us at this point in time, Liam, but me and Lawrence is probably very well known to be bumping into folk carrying about the place. I met a couple of nice guys on Saturday at the game, so a shout out to Danny from over across the Emerald Isle, and also a wee shout out to Peter Innes, who I know is going through a wee bit of a tough time just now in the hospital. He's in the spinal unit at this point in time from the Bucky boys. So all the best from everyone at Axom to him. Lawrence, not been on in a week, but we're back to winning ways, but we're on the eve of another Champions League game. And I must say I'm quite excited for this one. I know we've got a tagline there that looks as if CCV is going to miss out, but I'm pretty excited to see Celtic back in Champions League action, because it's been a bit strange, I think, the way we've started in the Champions League.
Well, there's not a lot of games left for us to get points. This is kind of the games that matter. You know, for me, the next two games are must-win games. So there's a lot riding on them. Yeah. You know, the league games are still a long way to go in the league, you know. So maybe not as important just now, but yeah, for Leipzig, for me, we've got to win this. And it's going to be interesting, you know, we're not without our challenges before the game. So, yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that centre-half partnership does. I think Welsh has been short of games. We talked about it before the transfer window shut. I thought put him out on loan, get him a year's experience elsewhere, and get in another experienced centre-half. He's certainly going to get experience tonight, isn't he?
He's certainly going to get experience. Obviously, he's played for Celtic in European football previously. He was featured in both Europa League campaigns. One we don't talk about, one not too bad to talk about. But Liam, would you agree that in terms of the Champions League so far, it has felt a bit strange? Obviously, we had that first game against Real Madrid. We're absolutely flying going into the game, coming off the back of a 4-0 derby win. Then you have that postponement for the Livingston game. You come back, your first game back's away to Shakhtar, and then you return and you play that game at St Mirren. It's just all felt a bit odd to me.
I mean, a big part of Celtic's game is momentum, quite clearly, and the postponements, whether we agree with them or not, the fact is that they did put a dampener on our momentum that we had coming through September. You know, great win in the derby, decent performance against Real Madrid, and then the blip against St Mirren, and thankfully we've won in the league since then, which proves it was a blip. But I think we're still going to be a week or two before we fully regain that momentum, but we're going to have to find something tomorrow night, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Lawrence, do you think that has been one of the issues, as Liam says there, in terms of that momentum being halted? Because I think after you suffer that 3-0 defeat against Real Madrid, even though it was a good performance, players want to play again, get it off their shoulders and return to winning ways. You don't do that. You then need to go straight from a Champions League game back into European football. You walk away from Shakhtar probably thinking, but we should have won the game, and then you have that poor result at St Mirren.
Yeah, listen, we definitely lost a bit of momentum, but the two games we've had so far in Europe, the amount of chances that we've created, if you're Ange, you're going, how have we not scored against Madrid? And how did we not beat Shakhtar? So it's been a bit disappointing for me, the European game, to come out of two performances with the number of chances created and take so few of the chances, which obviously has resulted in us only having 1 point. If you look where it's sitting, I'd have thought, Real Madrid are in the points they thought they would be on. Leipzig are less, they probably thought that, they beat Shakhtar, they beat the Real, so they're probably 3 points behind. We were maybe looking at it and going, well, we'll beat Shakhtar, so we're 2 points behind. And you look at Shakhtar and they're looking and going, well, we might beat Celtic, but they wouldn't have thought, I don't think they'd have thought they'd been on 4 points, so they're a point ahead. The next couple of games, the reason I'm saying it's must wins, Leipzig probably look at Real games and so we'll take nothing from them. So, sorry, Shakhtar's looking at it going, we'll take nothing. So they can only win out the next 2 games because their expected points is nothing. They're going to be at 4 points, anything above that's brilliant. With us against Leipzig, we've got to expect to win at home, at least a draw away from home. But the fact that we've already dropped, 2 points behind where we thought we were, that's what I'm saying it's must win. But we could be facing Shakhtar, they could be on 4 points, we could be on 5. Shakhtar would be going, a draw at Celtic Park will do us, because they've got Real Madrid the last game, we've got Leipzig at home. They would fancy getting a bit better result against Leipzig at home than us away to Real Madrid. So, yeah, I think Europe's been disappointed for the number of chances that we've created and just not turned them into goals, and resulting in us only having 1 point.
Well, I'm going to look at it a glass half full in the terms that they've only played 2 games. Obviously, it's a return to the group stages for the first time in 5 years. We've hosted the European champions in the first game. I think the point in Shakhtar, Liam, is only going to be kind of decided upon how this group stage ends, and we look at it either as a real positive point, if we take, for instance, 4 points against Shakhtar and Leipzig, or we look at it as the one that maybe got away from us and the whole picture of the group. Because, I kept saying after the Shakhtar game, a point away in the Champions League isn't going to be a bad result, unless by the end of match day 6 you're looking at it and thinking that was a game that we probably should have won, and it would have taken us, whether it's the last 16 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the 2 home games, Leipzig and Shakhtar, that is going to define this entire campaign. Win those 2, and I think worst case scenario, we're going to get third. Then it's a case of, can we take something away in Leipzig? And also, obviously the Bernabeu is one that's everybody's writing off, but we play Madrid last, assuming that they wipe the floor with everybody else in the group as we expect them to. They will have already qualified by that point, and it's a question of, we might be playing against their reserve team at that point, which might just give us a wee outside chance of sneaking something.
Yeah, there's possibility of that, and we know that Real Madrid don't have a great, I don't want to say a great track record in the group stages, but they know that there is shocks, there have been shocks, we don't want to bang on about Sheriff, but it did happen. There's a blueprint there to say that a team has went to the Bernabeu taking something. There's been plenty of teams in the group stages that have did that, so that there is potential with that. Lawrence, you mentioned the amount of chances that we have missed, and there's absolutely no doubt about that. We created great chances against Real Madrid, great chances against Shakhtar Donetsk. Is it, it's not even a question, is it now time at Celtic take those chances? But how do you think that the chances turn into getting the results? Because that's what the players are banging on about in the press, and it's what Ange Postecoglou is talking about in the press.
I think some of the chances, maybe the players got stage fright against Real Madrid. You could maybe write it off against that, playing Real Madrid. For some of them, it's the biggest game they're going to have played in. It's Champions League, it's the opening group stage, but I'm not too sure you could say stage fright away to Shakhtar for missing it. So I really think, I don't think, although we scored a lot of goals in the league, I don't think our strikers are in top form yet. And maybe it's a percentage game, Maybe we'll create one chance against Leipzig and we'll take it, and all of a sudden, it looks we're taking a higher amount of chances. But it's just something you need to play through, because we know the boys have got goals in them. We've stepped up a level. They just need to start playing the back in the net when we're creating those chances. Because Ange can only give them a system that creates chances. It's up to the players in the park to put them away.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's just the way that, the structure, the system, and whatever else it is drilled into it. Liam, at your point, Joseph's come in here in the comments to say is that Real Madrid did draw at the weekend against Osasuna in the Bernabeu. So, there is teams that do go there in La Liga and pick up points. So there's absolutely no reason why, as you say, you can't just write that game off, because it's going to be another opportunity and a chance for us to get, whether it's a point or try and go all out to take something there to look forward. in terms of the point Lawrence makes about the strikers, we've got a comment coming in about that to say, why haven't we scored? Maybe our strikers are not good enough as we think they are. I think they are. I think, as you say, we've just went through a wee bit of a blip. I agree with what Lawrence says there, that they're not on top form as of yet, but I don't really think scoring goals is an issue for Celtic just now. Would you agree with that?
I mean, at the end of the day, Kyogo and Maeda, you have the two of the top 3 goal scorers in the J League last season, despite the fact that Kyogo only played half a season there before he came to us. You've got Giacomakis, who was the top scorer in the Dutch league before he came to us. Not bad considering he was with a team that got relegated. So the goal scoring pedigree is definitely there. I agree with Lawrence. Our strikers are not in top form at the moment. But again, I think that it's an interesting dynamic, because that prolonged break that we had with the postponement and then the international break soon afterwards, our rivals in the league seem to have come out of that with a regained balance. They've kind of taken time to steady themselves, whereas we have been knocked off our stride because we were just finding our full flow just before all this kicked off. So I think my only worry is that tomorrow's going to come a wee bit too soon, because I think in a week or two everything's going to be backfiring on full cylinders. But it's just what happens in the interim that's worrying a wee bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think looking at a game like Saturday coming in, I think, looking at it, it was always going to be one of those games. I felt that the mood in Saturday actually getting was a wee bit kind of gloomy, Lawrence. It was a rainy day here. It just didn't feel as if, I don't know, that almost if the weather was the perfect backdrop to the game that was going to proceed in front of us. But sometimes wins like that are really what picks you up. And after, the start-stop that we had through September, I've spoken about that momentum. I agree with Liam that it's just about getting a run of games together. And when we do get that run of games together, we're not really going to be having these conversations about goals and chances.
But listen, at the weekend, hit the bar, hit the post, a couple of penalty shouts. The tackle and attack, the boy could easily have been sent off for one of the penalties they could have sent off. There's a few things that didn't go for us, but you're not going to win every game 4 or 5-0. We certainly, the chances were back up there again. We'd seen a couple of them a wee bit uncomfortable near the end when Callum gets sent off, but Motherwell's goals that's a free goal, isn't it? Yeah, it's a free goal from them. It's a bit uncomfortable, especially when there's a magic 5 minutes injury time comes into it. Considering there was none in the first half. But you're going to get those in a 38-game campaign, aren't you? You're going to get wins where it is just 2-1, you win by the odd goal. So it's 3 points. You march on. The good thing is, I suppose, it's more minutes for Welsh and Jens together, because they're going to need it in preparation for Leipzig. They need to get an understanding, I suppose, that back 5. They need to get that understanding, because when Carter Vickers is in there with Starfelt, it seems a lot more solid, doesn't it? But they've got a lot more experience of playing together. At the beginning of last season, the two of them were getting pelters. So there is a bit of time sometimes for the defences to gel and get minutes on the park. So maybe it's a bonus that Welsh and Gents could put under a wee bit of pressure, or get another 90 minutes together. So we'll see. But I think it is just getting time on the park for them.
Yeah, I totally agree. As well as that, obviously both didn't go away international. Stephen Welsh has been involved. Scotland under 21s. He's obviously now past making that team, so he wasn't away. Both him and Yates, I'd imagine, with Joe Hart, were all working, quite closely at Lennoxtown together. So Celtic will have been working towards us. The goal at the weekend doesn't come from a Welsh or Yates mistake. It comes from, I don't know what the comments will say about it. Joe Hart, Josip Juranovic. It just comes from absolutely nothing, and Motherwell are back in the game. But as you say, Lawrence, plenty of chances at the weekend, and I think a Celtic team that is firing takes those chances and goes on to win the game. But I don't think we've got that issue at all. Liam, just to come to this point, Callum in the comments here saying a good result tomorrow can get us firing again. To me, a good result, I could be happy if we take a draw over there. Just a positive result, don't lose the game. I think, as I say, at the weekend, just getting that 3 points against Motherwell, that was all we wanted. I think all we really needed, and that can then just start to put you back onto a path that, you talk about teams setting themselves, that 3 points could go a long way, just setting Celtic back into hopefully a run of good form.
Yeah, I mean the Champions League now, this is not an exact science, but when I look at it, I generally think about it in terms of, if you look at it like as if it was 3 two-legged ties like you used to have in the old style European Cup, right? We've drawn with Shakhtar away. If we beat them at home, I expect we'll finish above them in the group. And the same goes for Leipzig. If we take 4 points from those 2 games, we should finish above them in the group. Now, that doesn't discount the freak result of one of them somehow beating Real Madrid at some point, because I don't see us taking anything from when we go to Madrid. But, generally speaking, I think a draw tomorrow and then 2 home wins sets us up nicely to at least get third in the group and have a shot at least at second, depending on how other results go. And to touch on the thing about the defence, there have been question marks about Stephen Welsh as to whether he's Celtic class or whatever, and I remain undecided, to be honest. I love his wholeheartedness, I love his commitment, I love seeing a young Celtic supporter coming through and making the grade. It's what I'm sure we all dreamed about at times in our lives, but he needs to have a big game. He needs to have his, I think back to example, when David Marshall had that game against Barcelona in the Nou Camp, right? That defined him. From that moment on, everyone's like, right, he's a goalkeeper. He's the real deal. Went on to have a magnificent international career and played at top level. Welsh has not had that game yet, and he's running out of time to have that game with Celtic. So hopefully tomorrow night could be that game where he just steps up and has a commanding performance that pushes us on and gets us what we need.
Yeah, there's absolutely no reason why it can't be. I mean, going into to take us away from Celtic just briefly, Scotland last week, when I saw Ryan Porteous in the team sheet, completely different, but when I saw his name in the team sheet, I thought, I really don't fancy this at this point in time, going over there. We know that Ukraine's a decent side from what we've watched, even as Celtic fans, from the bulk of the Shakhtar team being made up of Ukrainian players, and I didn't fancy Ryan Porteous, but that was a big game for him and a big performance for him, where a lot of Scotland fans were saying, hands up, yep, well done. And I think that probably, as you say, Liam, if Stephen Welsh goes and has that game tomorrow night, some people, I think, will be quite happy to eat their words. But Lawrence, whether he is or not Celtic class, and that's what Liam's saying there, I'm a big fan of Stephen Welsh. I still think there's more to come from him in his game. He's all we've got tomorrow night, and we need to hope that he has a big performance, and that will be crucial to Celtic either getting a point or getting a victory over in Germany tomorrow night.
Yeah, we're going to rely on him. I think he's got the potential. He just needs minutes, and it's how many minutes. Beginning of the season, I was worried how many minutes they would get at Celtic Park. Because you're expecting, Carter Vickers, Starfelt, and I was expecting Jens to play in front of him. Well, he's getting minutes now. It's time to step up. Listen, he's sure he can be a threat in the opposition box. I think him and Jens just need minutes together to get an understanding. I touched on it earlier, Carter Vickers and Starfelt were getting pelts beginning of last season, and they got the minutes together. They've come through it, and I think it could be the same for Welsh and Jens. Get minutes together, prove that you can do it, get an understanding of what each other's going to do in the park. So it's a big game. The stage is his.
That's it, and they'll know exactly what to expect. And Ange Postecoglou will, I've spoken to both of them and told them what he expects from their performance. And them going back to that, with Stephen Welsh and Moritz Jones, what was your overall take from their performance at the weekend? Because, to me at this point in time, I feel as if Stephen Welsh has become the new scapegoat at Celtic Park. It used to be Greg Taylor. I could feel it on Saturday. People were getting on his back at the very first mistake, and it almost kind of transpired after that. Do you kind of get that feeling? Because I thought overall the back two on Saturday didn't particularly have a bad game. You know, a bad mistake between the goalkeeper and Josip Juranovic brings Motherwell back into the game. If that moment doesn't happen, I don't really think that Yates or Welsh takes the pelters that they are getting at this point in time.
No, I mean, the fact is that you could probably name about 5 or 6 players in the team at the weekend who did not play to their best, right? It was not a vintage performance, but as we said before, the important thing was to break that run of one game loss and to get another win and get back onto winning ways and get back to top of the league, which is what we did. And I don't think that any of the defensive players, even Juranovic, although, you know, him and Hart, it was a communication error clearly for the goal. I don't think any of them were particularly any worse than any of the other players in the team who might have underperformed. So I think singling out either Jens or Welsh or Juranovic is a bit unfair.
Yeah, I totally agree. On overall performance, much like the St Mirren game, you know, Welsh and Jens came in for stick there, rightfully so, you know, poor at the back. But at the same time, Celtic's forward players, midfielders, had a poor game, didn't create chances that would get us back into the game. So, you know, we win as a team, we lose as a team. It's not going to help us get into a Champions League team to think that, you know, it's these two guys' fault and that's it. It's a collective. And that's the overall bigger picture of it. But, you know, Lawrence, going into this, the two of them are what we're going to need to depend on. And I must say, actually, at the weekend, I thought Stephen Welsh had a better game than Moritz Yates beside him. Yates being the more experienced defender out of both of them.
Yeah, but I suppose you've touched on it. They need to do it together. It's the partnership and understanding you need to get as a defence or as a back five. And it's going to come through minutes. I don't think they're bad games at the weekend. Were they particularly good against St Mirren? No, but then again, you know, that's one game in 38. You know, these things happen. If you go every 38 league games or 37 league games between a loss, you're going to be happy, aren't you? You know, St Mirren say, well, it's just a freak result. I put that down as, and I thought Motherwell, you know, they were decent enough against Motherwell. It wasn't at the back that was concerned with. It was taking our chances. It was concerned us because we had a lot. You know, scored 2 and another day it would have been 5 or 6. But yeah, listen, as you said, he's the only boy we've got. I know Liam says it's kind of that run of one game without a win. I'm sure the Scottish press were referring it to Ange's 3 games without a win. It's, you know, it's just nuts at times. Listen, give the boy a bit back today. I think he'll step up. I think he's got potential. My only worry beginning of the season was getting minutes into him. He's getting minutes now. I think with those minutes, he's going to get a better player. Ange has got a record of developing young players, so, you know, we'll see what Leipzig brings.
At the end of the day, he could score 3 own goals tomorrow night. It doesn't matter as long as Kyogo scores 5 at the other end, you know?
Yeah. Well, we'll maybe let him away with 2.
Well, maybe.
I had a bad enough experience at the weekend with 5 and 6 frees, so we'll stay away from that one. But a lot of people are, you know, coming in to say here, Lawrence, in agreement with you about Welsh, that he does need that game time, and that, you know, Donald here's coming in to say that he needs games. He knows himself. He said he's been a stopgap for Celtic at times, which makes it difficult, but he's a young boy who deserves to be in the squad at least. We will move that into a chat around Celtic's academy. We know that Stephen Welsh has been there as a young boy and progressed right through the ranks and ended up coming into the team. Liam, I want to fire this one over to you. Gary's come in to say that Welsh and Yates deal with dangerous balls like old-style centre-halves. Cameron Carter-Vickers recycles the balls like a top-class central defensive midfielder, as he's put it, on top of being defensively solid. Is it possible that the standards set by Cameron Carter-Vickers are so high that when he does drop out, you know, we can see that gap, and maybe we're just an expectation that the type of football that Ange Postecoglou plays, it's high pressure, it has a lot of risk to it, but I think it was described as high risk, ultimate reward football. Carter-Vickers is extremely good at it, taking the ball under pressure and playing it out from the back. I don't think Welsh and Yates are those type of players, and it might just be that the standard's been set by Vickers so high that when you do bring guys like this in, and they may look at times a bit dodgy with balls coming out the box or playing out from the back, that it's just, you know, too quick to judge on it.
I mean, the thing is, I agree with the point that they do. Certainly, Welsh especially plays in a more traditional centre half style, whereas Carter Vickers is more of the sort of well, not on the same level, but in terms of style, sort of the Lothar Matthäus type who plays football out from the back. In his later years, Matthäus was a sweeper at Bayern Munich and played that kind of role very well. But I think that there's a time and a place for the old style as well. When you're 1-0 up with 5 minutes to go away to Leipzig, you don't want a guy who's going to try and pass it around the back. You want a guy who's going to rosette it, And I think that's the thing. There's room for both styles. But I think that the big takeaway from all of this entire situation is that we underestimated just how important Carter Vickers and Starfelt are to our squad. A lot of people were very dismissive of Starfelt, and there's been a lot of talk about whether he or Jens should play alongside Carter Vickers. And that's a debate that will play out in due course as Jens gets more game time. But Carter Vickers is the man. And we really are weakened defensively without him. And that's not a slight on any of the other players. I just think he's a cut above everything else we've got.
Yeah, absolutely. And his price tag says that. Both their price tags actually say that. And even coming to that, some comments here, Craig came in to say that they look dodgy dealing with cross balls out of the box compared to CCV and Starfelt. That was probably something that was directed towards Carl Starfelt and Cameron Carter-Vickers early on last season, especially Carl Starfelt. I think the jury for some Celtic fans was still out on him until that fantastic display at Ibrox in the 2-1 victory. Lawrence, Liam said Cameron Carter-Vickers is the man. I totally agree with him on that. And I think, Alan's come in here to say he makes his defensive partner look a lot better.
Yes.
I totally agree with that, but it's about, as you say, two guys stepping up. Cameron Carter-Vickers isn't going to be there. He's not going to be that steady presence in defence, and it's for both these guys now to show that they can make the step up. They've been given an opportunity and a platform here to perform at the very top level of European football for Celtic. It's about stepping up.
Yeah, listen, I think a lot of it comes down to confidence, because last season, Cameron Carter-Vickers and Starfelt got slaughtered because we didn't have confidence in them. They needed time to learn how to play the style Ange wanted, and I think Welsh and Jens are facing that just now. It's about getting the confidence, isn't it? And once they've got that, they'll feed off it. But it's only going to come with good performances and minutes on the pitch. And away to Leipzig, if we have a solid defensive performance there, and listen, Welsh is a threat in the other box as well. You never know. He's good at attacking a ball in their box, so a good performance there, as Liam alluded to earlier, could be the making of them, like it was with David Marshall out the way to Barcelona. So, yeah, and I think against Motherwell it was decent. It was certainly, they'd improved from the performance against St Mirren. So, yeah, I'm not overly worried about them as a partnership. I just think they need time. But I do think Cameron Carter-Vickers and Starfelt's a better partnership, but they've had more time in the park together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree with that. But it's what you've got at your disposal tomorrow night. Ange Postecoglou's likely to only have Stephen Welsh and Moritz James at his disposal. But, the expectation
Listen,
is
what
there.
happens if there's an injury at centre-half?
Well, we don't have near Beaton to rely on. Like in previous years, I think that would have been an answer right away. We would probably tell you. You're then probably looking at potentially somebody like Oliver Abelgard having to drop in there, or even somebody like Anthony Ralston having to be brought in to play right centre half or something, because you are limited in options. We only do have those two options. That's maybe out with Celtic, possibly taking one of the younger lads over with them, but you'd imagine maybe somebody like Abelgard would maybe end up dropping in there, but hopefully that doesn't happen. Both come through the game fine, and we don't need to worry about that. But Liam, just going back to Saturday, as I say about Stephen Welsh and Moritz James, comments coming here to say that Welsh takes penalties because he continually passes the ball sideways to their centre halves when he goes forward. Fans' eyes don't lie week in, week out. I'd disagree with that. I think there's a goal, I think it's against Hearts, potentially, and it's Welsh that's actually against Aberdeen, the first game of the season, and instead of playing the ball sideways, he wants to play the forward pass. And from some of the data surrounding Stephen Welsh, not everybody's into football data, he is one of the Celtic defenders who likes to take a step out with the ball and play the forward pass more than some of the other guys.
Well, I'm probably already going to get pelters for comparing Carter Vickers to Lothar Matthäus, but I'm going to make another comparison here. I'm going to compare Stephen Welsh to Claude Makelele. Right? If you think back to when Real Madrid had Claude Makelele playing in their midfield, I think it was Zinedine Zidane who said, he does the hard work so we don't have to. Makelele's entire job in that team was to win the ball and give it to better players to do the skillful stuff. And I think that is what Welsh is doing when he's passing the ball sideways. He's winning the ball, then he's giving it to somebody who is naturally a better playmaker than he is. Now, quite often that's going to involve a sideways pass. And again, there's a time and a place for it. Is it as effective as what Carter Vickers offers us? No, it isn't. But nobody in our current defensive makeup is. And I think what he does well. It's just a bit more simplistic and a bit less exciting to watch than what Carter Vickers offers us. But that's no Welsh's fault. He's just a different type of player.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, but I kind of think back to when Stephen Bell started to get that consistent run in the Celtic team and Chris Ayer was in there. It's almost if you try to do what Ayer used to do, is take that wee step out of defence and try and start for something for Celtic, which can be important in games. If we're looking at Saturday's game and it's tight, sometimes it just needs that wee break and run out of centre defence to start you in an attack. And as you say, if you know in yourself that you lack maybe the ability of some of the Celtic's more creative players, give the ball to the better players and let them go and do their stuff. It's not up to Stephen Welsh to create chances for Celtic. His job first and foremost is defending and keeping the ball out the net. But Ange harks back to players being creative and giving the forward players a platform to go and do their stuff. So there's a balance to be had in an Ange Postecoglou team, but it's about stepping up to that and that expectation that Ange wants from his players. Lawrence, there's a bit of chat in and around Celtic's midfield tomorrow in the chat, so I want to come to that. We've seen Aaron Moy feature for Celtic quite regularly since coming in, certainly off the bench, and some people are asking, would there be potential? I know this was something that folk were saying about after the Shakhtar game before we play St Mirren, of possibly bringing in a more defensive-minded midfielder tomorrow night. Could you see Ange Postecoglou thinking about that at all?
Well, I think Jared said he won the league in Australia one year, played two number sixes and playing a double pivot. So we do have a lot of number sixes at the club. The problem is, Callum's our best, but he's also our best number 8. And I think maybe Ange maybe we've got some number sixes because he's trying to say, well, if he gets someone like Moy or maybe Abelgard in there, it'll allow me to push Callum further forward, but allow me to be more flexible in the game because I know Callum can play both positions really well. Would I see it tomorrow against Leipzig? Nah, mate. I wouldn't say it. I think we'll stick with Callum at number 6. I wouldn't see Moy coming in. I just think it'd be a change too much. Maybe later in the game, maybe if you get something to hold on to, I might see it happening. But I think initially Ange is going to go out there and try and get a foothold in the game, hopefully get 1 or 2 goals, and then maybe second half when he's making his subs and make going, right, we've got something to hold on to here. Let's change it a wee bit now. But I wouldn't think we'd kind of change the style from the off.
Liam, in terms of that, and I think that's a really good point, and it certainly feeds into Dyson Maeda, who I know is a player that you know really well, that we've got in the comments here saying that he couldn't hit a barn door even though he was the second top goal scorer in the J-League and then top goal scorer after Kyogo.
Somebody needs to watch a bit more Japanese football. I think that's no offence, but that's a very ignorant and uneducated comment to make, quite frankly.
The point I was going to make to you there about Dyson Maeda is I think sometimes his performance is dictated by the way Celtic do play football.
Exactly.
Maeda is definitely a type of player that likes the gung-ho approach of going right at a team and having a good goal, which is something we did in Shakhtar. It dropped off a bit. But any time I feel when Dyson Maeda plays for Celtic and we go for it right away, I think his performance level just goes right up. I don't think he's the type of player, from what I've watched of him, from little bits I've seen of him playing for the national team. I never watched him as a player in the J-League. He's not a guy who's going to be a Jota, who's going to maybe pull you out a hole when you need him and do something creative that maybe is out the ordinary. But he'll certainly be a person who will give 100%, will press until till dusk, probably. He's got an incredible battery in doing that, and he has got a good, decent track record of scoring goals. It's just about, I think, his performance is up to the way Celtic approach games of football.
Well, again, it's the Stephen Welsh argument. Yes, Maeda has not hit top form this season, but neither has Kyogo. Neither has Giakoumakis when he's played. You know, it's that's a very good comment from Craig there, just saying that, you know, he needs a run of 5 or 6 games, because he does. I mean, I watched Maeda carry an entire team for a season in the J League, right, when he played for Matsumoto Yamaga. He was the only guy in that team with any class, quite frankly. And, you know, he has that in him to really lift an entire team when he has to. And he does have, although his speed and his durability are kind of what we see most of because of the way he's deployed at Celtic, he is a very creative player as well when you need him to be. Particularly if you watch some of his games with Yokohama last season, he set up probably as many goals as he scored, and it was really the way that he performed was at times almost like a number 10, whereas we look at him primarily as a winger. And I think, yes, he can do that, but, you know, so can Kyogo. But I would argue that neither of them is at their strongest position. But it's what they are sometimes called on to do for Celtic. And the great thing about Ange is that he's got these players from all over the world, and he's got them to understand, look, this might not be your best position. This is what I need you to do for our team. And they do it. And Dyson, sometimes he doesn't have a great game. Sometimes he does miss a chance here and there. But you could never, ever question that guy's commitment, you know?
No, not at all. He's one of my probably favourite players just now at Celtic. I just like what he gives to the team. And I actually think back to that really good header he scored against Bodo. I know it's not really a game that we talk about, but again, it was you know, I'm talking about that creative element to his game that he maybe just doesn't have, that Jota does have in his arsenal. But, you know, that's an example of Celtic getting forward on the attack, and there's Dyson Maeda in the right position at the right time. And I know that Hajime Moriyasu's tried to use him through the middle at times. He certainly played that last week in the game against the USA, whether that was just being experimental or not, but he is confident to do that. Something I found really interesting, Liam, at the weekend was usually when you do see Maeda and Jota play together, you see both wingers switch. Me and my pals have a joke about this because it used to be the old Neil Lennon thing, you know, switch the wingers and see what happens, but it is something that Ange Postecoglou likes to do with Maeda and Jota. It's something I've asked Jota about in a press conference, and he said that is something that they do work upon in training, that both feel comfortable in switching either side, because it gives Celtic a complete different approach to the game, and it also gives your fullback something difficult to deal with.
See, that again speaks to something about Maeda that has not really been highlighted since he came to Scotland, and that is his adaptability. Because I've seen him play for 4 different teams. If you include the Japanese national team, I've seen him play for 4 different teams, and he's effectively, his main position has been different in every team. At Yamaga, he was the lone striker. At Yokohama, he was part of a front 2. And when he plays for Japan, he alternates between being through the middle or sometimes being wide. And then at Celtic, he's deployed primarily as a winger. And that's the thing. He is, I guess, what you would call a utility player. You know? But it's interesting to note that despite the fact that a lot of the Celtic fans do criticise Maeda for his lack of goals so far this season. And this is not a slight on Kyogo, but it's quite telling that Moriyasu, the Japanese manager, consistently picks Maeda ahead of Kyogo when he's picking his starting lineup. I think that tells you about, you know, different strokes for different folks. Different players have different roles to play depending on what team they're in. And at the moment, Maeda is perhaps better suited to the way Japan play than the way Celtic play.
Yeah, but that's potential. I know some people would probably flip that in its head and say Moriyasu's not picking Hatate just now. But no, I totally agree with that. He probably looks at Maeda as just having something that wee bit extra to his game, and does consistently pick him. And he was a really, really important player coming in last January for Celtic. And, you know, I don't think we said this earlier on in the show that probably none of Celtic's attackers yet have really hit top form. Maeda's included in that, but so is guys like Giacomakis, Kyogo, and I think it's really unfair that Maeda seems to be the one that folk keep picking out as, you know, not the player that we were sold on, because I actually think he is. And you will see him play a big part for Celtic this season. Lawrence, to come to you and Daizen Maeda, I know obviously Liam watched a lot of Japanese football, so it's good to get his insight on it. But Ralph Thompson's coming here in the comments to say that Maeda is super important defending from the front. He'd start him. I'd certainly start him. Mark's saying that. But played well Saturday, starts for me. I think that's something else that's important to mention when Celtic playing European football, is that you do need your wingers to, you know, if we're going to press and go forward and get in teams' faces, absolutely. But you also need them to come back, and Maeda's not shy of doing a defensive job on either side, whether it's in the left wing or in the right wing.
It's a great work rate. I think he brings out the best in Greg Taylor. I think they've got a great partnership up and down the left. And I suppose defending from the front, just the amount of pressure he puts on. We know he's got that engine, that speed. So, yeah, for me, Maeda starts. I don't think I'd be disappointed at all by him. You know, I've really been surprised by how good he is in terms of work rate, speed, how well he's fitted in. I know Liam watched him a lot before he came to Celtic and ever, but I thought, you know what, this guy's a really decent player, and he can play across the front three. He gives us that versatility during the game to change things up. You know, sometimes I think people just need to single players out, and I'm not too sure for what reason. I think he's a guy that consistently delivers a decent level of performance. I don't think I've seen him fall below a 7 in a Celtic shirt. So, yeah, I think he's a great player for us. Will they get changed during the game? Probably. You know, it's the way Ange likes to play. He maximises the 5 subs and they're using them. You expect to see 5 of your front 6 changing, and Maeda's probably going to be one of them, but I've never seen him hide in the park. You know, he always shows for the ball. He always gives 100%, which I can't say that about every Celtic player I've ever seen. You know, there's been a few that have hidden, they're not showing for the ball or whatever, or, you know, chipped it on the park at times. You'll remember Edward when with Kyogo in his more natural position, I suppose Lee would say, out in the wing, put one on a plate for him and he doesn't finish from a few yards out. His heart wasn't in it. I've never seen a performance like that from Maeda. He always gives you absolutely everything.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I'm just having a wee look here, just in terms of the league last season. 16 appearances in the league, 6 goals, 5 assists. You know, that is something that Ange Postecoglou will certainly be looking at. I know this season he might not be hitting that form as of yet. I think a lot of us hoped that having that full pre-season under his belt under Ange would maybe, you know, start him off with a flyer, but it's not as if he's been poor for Celtic. It's just about getting that run of games, and if he does get that run of games, you'll see a completely different player. And certainly in the European stage, he is the type of player that you do need, that is going to track back when you're under pressure, as Celtic will be tomorrow night, no doubt about it, but will also exploit space that I'm sure Leipzig will leave for, as they are 10th in Bundesliga just now. As somebody's coming in here to remind us this game is winnable. There's been a lot of change there since Tedesco left. I think that the Shakhtar game kind of came a wee bit out the blue. Liam, I know that's obviously when Tedesco lost his job. They had a decent performance. Match day 2 away to Real Madrid. I know they had a great victory against Borussia Dortmund. That's also been matched with a thumping off Borussia Mönchengladbach. That there's absolutely no reason why Celtic can't go to Leipzig tomorrow night and hope to get something, because this is still a team. I know Timo Werner's came back in. He's back in goal scoring form. They beat VfL Bochum at the weekend 4-0, but there's absolutely no reason why Celtic should be going here fearing anything anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's nothing there's nothing to fear. I mean, at the end of the day, this Leipzig team are not by any stretch of the imagination the best team we're going to play this season, I don't think. I think once we had our game against Real Madrid, and you think how we played against them for the first hour, we will not have a tougher challenge anywhere this season, regardless of how far we get in European competition. So, no. What I would say, actually, is that Daizen Maeda in particular could be key tomorrow night, because if you look back to the Leipzig-Shakhtar game, where Shakhtar beat them 4-1. 2 of the 4 goals came from forced defensive errors because the Shakhtar players were basically being a nuisance in the way that Maeda is excellent at, with the forward press, as we call it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at the one with the goalkeeper, bad mistake, and as you say, getting in and on the break too, Leipzig are certainly there to be got at. People are telling me there's no point quoting league positions just now, but I'm just saying, Leipzig haven't had the best of starts to the season. They've changed their manager. They sit bottom of Champions League Group F, so they're there to be got at, and I think that's a really good point in Maeda. We've seen Mudryk. Not going to compare Mudryk to Maeda, but we've seen how he exploited Leipzig in that first game, and that's something I think Daizen Maeda should certainly be looking to do tomorrow night. Lawrence, just to pull us back in, because we kind of went a wee tangent there to talk about Daizen and the way that Celtic's going to approach this game tomorrow night. The midfield, I agree with you. I don't see Ange making any major changes to it. I think you play your best players, and to me at this point in time, that midfield three picks itself with McGregor, Hatate and O'Reilly. But I do know that if I think back to after the Shakhtar game, there was people possibly questioning whether somebody like Aaron Moy would have been the type of player to bring in there, but that seems to have been put to bed after his performance at St Mirren.
Look, I don't think it was, I don't know how many shots we had on target against St Mirren, but I think it was like 35 minutes in, 80% possession we didn't have any on target, and Moy was your defensive midfielder. I wouldn't blame him for his not getting shots on target or putting the ball in the net. I think he's done okay since he came to Celtic, but I'd go with the same midfield as yourselves. If we've got something to hold on to with 20 minutes to go, you might say maybe Moy or Abdelgard. Who knows? I could see making a change then, but not from an off. Liam says you've got nothing to fear. Well, it is nothing to fear, but fear itself. And I think that's maybe what Ange is so frustrated about. Maybe that's why we didn't take the chances against Madrid. A bit of stage fright, weren't sure. This is a must-win game for Leipzig tomorrow. They've got to take chances. They've got to open up. If they come out of this and they're only on 1 point after 9 games, they know that's them finished. They need to get on 3 points. So I think it's going to be fairly open, which suits the kind of play that, kind of style that Ange's got. Definitely suit Maeda if he's got a bit of space to run into. So midfield, yeah, I think it'll pick itself. You look at the Leipzig thinking they've got to come out, they've got to leave space. And if we can turn the ball over quick, especially Callum at number 6, I think he turns it quicker than any other number 6s. We'll get chances, and it's just about taking them.
Yeah, and that's been, I think, the story of our group stage campaign so far. We'll get chances, it's just about taking them, absolutely. I kind of laughed when I was writing up some of my notes for this show. I was in Leipzig for the last time we played there 4 years ago, and I had a wee look back at the Celtic lineup, and even though many German beers had been consumed in the afternoon, when I looked at this lineup, even the drink wasn't enough to kind of make you worry. Just to kind of give you an idea, when Celtic last played in Leipzig, this was the team. Craig Gordon in goals, a back four of Christian Gamboa, Jozo Simonovic, Dedrick Boyata, Kieran Tierney, midfield of Callum McGregor, Eboué Kouassi, remember him? Olivier Cham, with Ryan Christie coming in out the cold to play as a number 10 behind Edward and Lewis Morgan. A wee bit of just a perspective on the last time that we visited Leipzig. I think that's the reaction I think we've all got, Liam.
Aye. Hopefully Leipzig are studying that and expecting similar tomorrow night.
Listen, I think if Leipzig are studying things, I think they'll be worried. Many goals have we scored in the league now so far this season. We've had a great start. Be it the last 2 games, or St Mirren, actually, Motherwell created loads of chances, and Leipzig know they've got to win this. I expect us to win away, and I think we've got to win away. But if you're Leipzig, you're looking at this thinking, we need to win our Europe's finish for us this season.
A draw is no good to them, because a draw they would stay below us, so that really is no use to them.
And they will be looking at it as a back-to-back chance to try and get points on the board now, because realistically for Marco Rose, obviously the first game he wasn't in charge, the second game you're coming in, you're playing Real Madrid, not a lot of time to prepare for it. This is probably his first chance to try and make an imprint for Leipzig in the Champions League in these 2 games against Celtic, and obviously he's visited Celtic Park before, with Salzburg 4 years ago, same group that we're talking about there, and but it's going to be a different test for him, and there's no reason why Ange Postecoglou can't get the better of him. So I'm pretty excited for this game. Lawrence, what were you going to say there?
I was just going to say, you touched that. Ange is going to be desperate to get a win as well. This
Absolutely.
is the stage he wants to be performing on. He will be doing everything he can to get this result. He'll be looking for 3 points.
Liam, I want to come to this one. In the game against Leipzig, we're playing Leipzig. In the game against Shakhtar, we kind of get the curveball and Sead Haksabanovic starting up top on that left-hand side with Jota on the right and Kyogo through the middle. I can't see a curveball like that happening for last night. I know people had been saying before the Shakhtar game, leading into it, Haksabanovic was starting to get minutes under his belt. He started the game off well, but was eventually subbed at half-time. I really don't see Ange making any type of kind of curveball into the team like that tomorrow. I think the team's going to be pretty set, almost, if not all the same players that played against Motherwell at the weekend.
Yeah, I think, like you say, coming back off the international break and not having played for a while, Motherwell was basically a warm-up for Leipzig. So I would imagine that the only changes that Ange would make to the team conceivably would be players coming back from injury or anybody who got injured at the weekend. So I don't see any unforced changes, put it that way.
Okay, absolutely. Lawrence Leal-Abada, there's been chat in the press today that he is expected to miss the game. He was at Celtic Park training this morning. It's Yom Kippur, obviously a big Jewish holiday. He missed out in the Real Betis game last season due to that. Without him in your team, you're probably looking at Haksabanovic and Giakoumakis as your attacking options off the bench, but he will be a miss. But it's also potential for Maeda and Jota as well as Haksabanovic coming off the bench to really stamp their mark on this. Abada's been in and out of the team, got that hat-trick. Got his goals against Rangers at the start of September, obviously in the game. He's been in and out of the team, but I think Abada's going to be a miss off the bench for Celtic tomorrow night, but it's also a chance for a guy like Haksabanovic to really step up and show his worth, as well as the two wingers likely to start for Celtic.
Listen, there's no doubt it'll be a miss, but there's no guarantee he was going to start. After starting with Jota Maeda anyway, Haksabanovic has got a chance. Listen, so is Jamesy Forrest. He's got a European pedigree. He knows where the goals are. He knows about assists. I think we're well covered in wings. It'll be a miss, but it's an area we've got to cover it. We've got covering. I think Giakoumakis is, his Kyogo's cover, is it? That's where that switch comes. So on the wings, I think it's Forrest and Haksabanovic that you're looking at as your cover. If you start with, obviously, when you're doing your...
Yeah, he'll be on the bench, no doubt about it. Just to kind of finish in the last 10 minutes, yesterday there was a podcast put out with a Scottish referee, Liam, and it looks as if VAR's going to come in to Scottish football before the World Cup break. It was expected that it would come in afterwards, which I know a lot of people weren't too chuffed with in the grand scheme of things. What's your thoughts on that? Because I think at the weekend, had it been in place, the McGregor red card might have been looked at a second time. I think that's up to just kind of judgment on that one, but certainly Celtic were probably unlucky not to get a penalty at the weekend for the handball.
Yeah. Right. Here's the part where any lurkers who are not Celtic fans are going to start calling me a crackpot. The reality is, VAR is not this silver bullet that's going to solve all the disciplinary problems in Scottish football, right? But it will help. It needs to come in sooner the better. But the fundamental problem, and this is one of the few things that Celtic and Rangers supporters seem to agree on, is the competence or lack thereof of the referees. Now, if you still have the same incompetent people looking at a TV monitor as opposed to looking at a ball on a pitch, there is no guarantee they're going to necessarily give the right decision just because they're looking at it on a monitor. And then that's before you even raise any questions about the honesty and integrity of said officials, which has rightly been questioned in the past and proven our assumptions about them proven to be correct in terms of their dishonesty. So, it's it's a start, but there needs to be a root and branch, complete review of refereeing in Scotland from top to bottom. How referees are selected, how they're trained, how they are paid, how they're incentivised, and how they are disciplined when they make a mistake. You know, refereeing in Scotland was one of the only jobs in the world where you can underperform consistently, but nobody is allowed to even question your competence, or you go on strike. You know, it's ridiculous. Referees should be paid more, but with greater pay should come greater accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's still a lot to be done about that as well, and the fact that they're part-time is probably another issue that a lot of people will point towards. Lawrence, it was Stephen Conroy, who's a former referee. I think he's quite well placed with this. He said in the podcast that it was imminent. You might just see it before the World Cup starts, but I think there's a lot in what Liam says there, and that it's great that we're getting VAR, but it's still going to be the same type of officials making the decision, which is the worry. And if you look at Callum McGregor's red card in isolation, I keep banging on about consistency in Scottish refereeing performances. I think it's something that just doesn't exist. You see the same one from James Sands happen, and he doesn't get sent off. If McGregor's is a red card, that's a red card, and if that's deemed to be a yellow card, and actually might have not been even a booking, I can't really remember with it, then it needs to be the same. It's about consistency, and it badly lacks consistency at this point in time.
Well, Sands one wasn't even a free kick apparently, but anyway, listen, for me, McGregor's a sender off every day of the week. You know, Hearts out off his line, the boys can't get the ball.
I think it's a sending off too. Absolutely, I think it's a sending off.
You know, as for decisions at Ibrox, I think Craig Levine, Jim McLeod, you can go through a litany of managers that have had some strange decisions against them and commentated on it. I think the biggest point, you know, refs are going to make mistakes, and so the guys, you know, watching it, it's the unaccountability, the fact they don't need to explain it. You know, what did you see there that wasn't a penalty? What did you see that the tackle and Hitaki's got to be a red card? You know, it's at least a yellow, but if there's VAR in, it's a red card. It's a straight foot, studs up late into his ankle, it's a red card. You know, even on Kyogo, I wouldn't mind seeing again. I know the terrestrial highlights package didn't really show it when he was going through. It looks as if the boy clips him and doesn't touch the ball. It's a penalty. So, but the fact they don't need to come out and speak, you know, they're wrong for a grand a game. Surely they should have to come out and justify their decisions instead of writing up a report and sending it off to Hampden. You know, it's not an inconsiderable amount of money. You know, a grand a game for a part-time job. Would it make it more interesting as a spectacle if they interviewed the ref after the game and go, right, ref, talk us through these decisions. What did you see there? What did you not see there? I can remember the Celtic captain getting punched and a player only being yellow carded. You know, the game wasn't even in progress. How would a ref explain that? I think that would put to bed a lot of the decisions, because actually having to come out and justify the unjustifiable, I think some of the decisions would change then. They would go, you know what, I can't go on live TV and say, yeah, I know, you know, striking an opponent in the head's an automatic red card. I saw it, decided it was only a yellow because there's no other rule than I decided not to apply the rules. You know, they're not going to come out and say that. So I think it does need looked at. I'm glad that VAR's coming in. I'm just wondering if John Beaton knew it was coming in sooner and thought he'd get a few dodgy decisions in beforehand. Who knows? But I don't know why, you know, it's all been held in Scotland. I think it's something we should be sharing between associations. You know, when VAR goes, Scotland doesn't need its own centre. Ireland doesn't need its own centre. Holland doesn't need its own centre. You could have a centre of excellence for VAR decisions and refer it there. You would take out, you know, the perception of bias then, you know, would certainly be addressed at that point. It would reduce costs, give them more maybe to invest in grassroots football and developing players rather than, you know, I don't know how many people's going to be in their VAR studio, but I just think it's ridiculous that, you know, a small country like Scotland isn't looking to share it with other countries and other associations and share some of that cost, gets rid of the perception of bias. You know, there's a few things there that we could be looking at, but other countries do it with refs. We know that Turkey will fly in refs, even Scottish refs at times, because they can't have that perception of bias and their big games. Only in Scotland would we have a perception of bias. They'd be criticised for mentioning it, but they would do nothing to tackle it. Well, wait a minute, there's a perception of bias here, right? Don't mention it, but yeah, we're quite happy to let it keep going. It just seems nuts. Surely they need to do something to tackle that. And back to the strikes point that Liam was making, that wasn't because we're criticising performance, that was because they get caught lying to a Celtic manager about a decision to rescind a penalty award. Oh, it's a penalty. Actually, Celtic, let's not give them it.
Yeah.
It's something that really needs looked at. You've had the heads of referee kicked out. You've had that refereeing strike. You had the head of, Liam will remember the head of the SFA having to resign with I think it was a £320,000 payoff. Celtic get about £250,000 compensation. He actually get more of a payoff than Celtic got in compensation.
Yeah.
If it had been left to the SFA, their two internal inquiries found nothing wrong. But when it got to open arbitration, they couldn't put a case forward. Did that tell you how crazy it is? They were able to put a case forward internally twice that won the day. But as soon as it was open arbitration, they couldn't put a case forward. What was it they said behind closed doors that couldn't be said in the open? And I think it still goes on.
Going back to that very point, that case you talk about for compensation, that SFA chief executive, if I remember correctly, his career before that was a landscape gardener.
Yeah.
How does that qualify a guy to run Scottish football? That's the old boys club in play. He should never have been near that job in the first place.
No, not at all. Yeah. And that's what both of you go back to as accountability, which just does not seem to exist within Scottish football at this point in time. Will much change with VAR? I have my reservations about it. I think it's good that it's there as a tool, but I think, Lawrence, you make a really lot of good points, just in terms of even cost, taking all ideas of bias and whatever else out it. In terms of the money that exists in Scottish football just now, we know we've got a TV deal now that people still think undersells the game. In terms of the money that's generated through that, it is not much. Why not look to cut costs and then look at that problem, biasness, and try and tackle that? We hope that we've given you some of a spring in your step before this game against Leipzig in the Champions League. I know some maybe were feeling a wee bit down after the Motherwell game. I think it was important that we got the 3 points. I know maybe the performance wasn't to be as what we expected, but it was important that we got the 3 points. CCV misses out tomorrow night, but we've got Welsh and we've got Ange. We need to hope for a big performance for them, and we'll just see how we get on. We'll be here tomorrow to build up to the game, and we'll be tearing it apart afterwards and then building up to St Johnstone at the weekend, which will be another tough tie away from home. Lawrence, as always, thanks for joining me on Tuesdays. Axom, Liam, you've been great to have on a Tuesday. You're very welcome anytime. Thanks to all our regular listeners, contributors. The support's much appreciated. You can vote for Axom for best in video content. The link should be below the video. I think it's still open, so it should be down there, as well as Natasha for best in women's football. Have